Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up, because in the wild, wild west of the Clark County family court system, there's a judge who just doesn't wear a robe. She wears her scars like medals. Meet Judge Mary Perry, the veteran turned jurist in Department P of the 8th Judicial District Family Division, a U.S. Air Force alumna, attorney, mother, grandmother, and human being who's been through the ringer and fire and walked out sharper. Judge Perry doesn't mince words. She's unafraid to confront the unseen tangled roots of parental alienation, calling out the quiet behaviors that slowly fracture families while challenging the court system to see what too many overlook. Her courtroom isn't a comfort zone, it's a place where nuance matters, accountability matters, and the kids matter most. She's been praised for bold, child first thinking. She's been criticized for blunt delivery, but love her or loathe her, you can't ignore someone who's willing to say that children deserve both parents and that ignoring alienation doesn't make it disappear. And that's where the real conversation begins. And if you believe these conversations matter, if you believe family court reform matters, if you believe kids deserve better, if you believe sunlight is the best disinfectant, then hit that like button. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to the Deadbeat Chronicles on YouTube so you don't miss the voices that are brave enough to step into the storm. Because we're not just telling stories here, we're documenting a movement. Welcome to the Deadbeat Chronicles. Judge Mary Perry, thank you very much for coming on down and talking with us today.
You're welcome.
All right.
My pleasure.
Well, let's talk about something sensitive like domestic violence.
Okay.
We were talking a little bit about that before we got recording. We don't need to dive into that quite yet. We might want to ease into that. But you are running for current re-election. Mm-hmm. And so the race is on,
The race is on.
And
that's a good song, too.
Yeah, great song. You remember the artist?
I do. Which one? The first one or the second one? I preferred the second one who did it.
I didn't know there was a first.
Oh, heck, what is
or maybe I didn't know there was a second.
I can't think of their names. It's been so long. Sawyer Brown did one.
Wasn't it Glenn Fry?
Nope.
The race is on?
No, the race is on.
Or Don Henley?
I see his face.
I thought it was one of the Eagles.
George Jones was the other one that did it.
Oh, okay.
I had to think about it. I had to get the face, and then the name had to come. I had to go through Tammy Wynette and everything to get there, though.
we better put the links, Dustin, in the comments below for both of those songs. But and I can only imagine that the conversations you're going to have on the campaign front are going to be all around the spectrum of what family law looks at, what family law does.
Pretty much.
I'd like to really stay as center focused as we can talk about and get your real guidance on, in order, co-parenting, custody, and parental alienation, because that's kind of how it all evolves naturally, right?
Yes.
And there is some, I'm sure, maybe some domestic violence in there,
a lot.
Unfortunately.
And sometimes a little and sometimes a lot. Sometimes I can go a couple weeks without hearing the word domestic violence, and then it's just like every single hour I hear it. And I have 4 cases an hour.
4 cases an hour immediately makes me want to ask the question, is that's not a heck of a lot of time.
It's 15 minutes per case.
Here, there's that much workload.
I have, when I checked on Wednesday, I had 440 open cases that needed hearings, trials, return hearings, whatever. When you get to the evidentiary hearing, you can have all day, 2 days, however much time you need to put on that case. But the initial hearings and all the stopgaps is pretty much Band-Aids on the problem until the judge can actually hear the evidence to make the final decision.
Time. And all of those cases, more than likely, are going to have multiple events, multiple hearings, multiple dates.
Usually, if there are children involved, there's going to be at least 2 hearings. You got the initial hearing, then you try to send them to mediation, unless you know without a doubt that it will never mediate. But the Nevada law requires them to go to mediation to try to work out their own deal. Because They know their kids. They should know what's in their best interest. Why would you want to put your children's visitation and timeshare schedule in the hands of a person who don't even know them? And when they can't come to a decision on what their children really need, that's what they're doing with me. And I'm always going to start with the children need both parents equally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that stems. You and I had the opportunity to have a great, just a video chat
Correct.
about a month ago, or maybe 2-3 weeks ago, whenever it was. And we talked about some of the symptoms that get to your courtroom, because a lot has happened before anyone ever gets to see you.
Correct.
Right. So I beg, just the very first question, I kind of asked it when you walked in. It was kind of funny. How do you tell our audience, how do we stay out of your courtroom, Your Honor?
Don't get married and don't have kids.
I mean, and of course that's not going to happen. We want America to thrive, so that's got to keep going, right?
There is a running joke out there. How do you avoid a divorce? Don't get married. However, marriage is the public policy that pretty much every state in the United States has. They prefer you to be married and be a family, raise your children together. So that's not the solution to avoid divorce. But you got to have mutual respect. You got to have mutual trust. Once you lose that trust, a major cornerstone of relationship is gone. Mm-hmm. And you got to either rebuild that trust or it's going to be over.
And rebuilding trust makes me think of resolution, fixing something, resolution.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we can go to groups to do that, large groups. Maybe they're defined in so many different ways. Socioeconomic, we could go down the list of groups. Families aren't groups. Every single one of them is different. Every single couple is different, and dynamic is different, and all this stuff. So to come with this major end-all, be-all, one fix it.
Yeah.
That's generational.
Yeah.
That's societal. When did you first become judge?
I first became judge I was elected in 2020, took the bench January 2021.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, and practicing law?
20 years.
20 years.
20 years.
So 20 years ago, the arguments were different, weren't they? Different technologies, different society, maybe different. Is social media? I guess where I'm going is social media taking things to a whole new realm of divide?
It does, because everything's
just society in general, really.
Everything's available on social media now. People don't realize when they post that. Let's go with something kind of ridiculous, because I don't want to talk about any cases that's ever been in front of me. But let's say someone goes out there and posts pictures of a needle with black tar heroin sitting there and say, look what I get to partake in. That's going to come into court one day because you're admitting to doing drugs, even if you've never touched the stuff. There is an admission, so that's going to cause where you're going to need to have a drug test and make sure, because if you're strung out on heroin, you shouldn't be taking care of a 6-month-old baby. And so those things like that can always come back and get you.
I'm sitting here listening to use that as an example. And
I
it
go
seems to me
ridiculous.
like a really extreme example, but you hear it more common than people think, don't you?
It's,
Unfortunately.
It probably is. When I was practicing law, and people would come in, well, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I'm thinking about separating with, the woman, the mother of my children. And I said, just do me one favor. Decide to do it before you hate her more than you love your kids. Because your kids should always come first. They know y'all are fighting. They're not stupid, so don't put them through that. And you want to be able to co-parent. So end it before it gets to that point, because once you hate your soon-to-be ex, you always put that hatred in front of the kids. Very few of them can work through that.
We talked a little bit also about on the parental alienation front. They have this back in the 80s. Dr. Gardner, I believe, I remember his name. Dr. Gardner came up with this parent alienation syndrome hypothesis.
Yeah.
It was rather generalized, as I understand it, using terms like brainwashing to a certain extent, which is not really a clinical term, psychological clinical term that could be used in the courts. So There's another Dr. Childress, that is taken it many levels deeper and talked about the pathology. Now, I won't begin to know even how to define pathological or pathology or any of those things. I know you understand that a lot more. So I understand alienation, custody issues from an experience standpoint, but from a legal standpoint, how hard is it to determine without something obvious like abuse, without on the subtle front, but there's still complete alienation between the child or the children and one of the two parents?
The best way for that is get in front of the court and send them out to be forensically interviewed by a child psychologist or MSW or LCSW, someone who has been trained to talk to kids and draw the kids out. Because those kids will say, well, my dad tells me, or my mom says this, and then they start getting more and more, and they start filling in it, and kids don't know how to not tell on their parents if they're just in a conversation. You can say, don't you tell them that this happened. If you can get those kids off on a different subject, something that they enjoy, and then you ask them a question, it's going to blurt out. It happens all the time because the kids are not trained to keep it silent.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Out of the mouths of babes will come the truth. I've seen a child come in, and one of the parents were talking about how the other parent would beat the daylights out of them all the time and drink and drive and all this other stuff. But, during the child interview, the kid come out and stated, oh, yeah, the first parent, she would pound away on dad and get in a vehicle drunk, and we'd be scared to death that we were going to die. So the mother was trying to say that the dad was the one who was doing it when, in fact, it was her. So she was projecting her behavior on the other parent and then trying to say, well, no, it was your dad. It was your dad. It was your dad, not me. So that's kind of a form of parental alienation.
Oh, yeah.
The courts are trying to actually get away from that. The psychologist is telling them, no, you can't alienate a parent if that other parent is a good parent. But, I disagree.
That's inaccurate.
I disagree because, if you are primarily, with one parent the majority of the time and they're keeping, the other parent away, and unfortunately it happens all the time and they're just constantly talking bad about that other parent, that child is going to protect themselves by starting to believe it. And that's going to alienate the other parent.
Yeah.
And, because the other parent's not there to prove that what they're saying is wrong.
And in 15 minutes of court, it's tough to determine.
It's tough to determine.
And even with the mediators and family, what are some of the options that are out there from a court standpoint? Is it mediator only, or are there a couple of kind of family behavioral directions, or is it only a court-appointed mediator? Is that the only position?
The only thing that we can do is pretty much send them to the Family Mediation Center to do mediation to see if they can come up with their own parenting plan, or at least holidays. It's bad when they can't even agree what to do with their kids on holidays. And, and when it gets to that point, it's like, okay, this is going to require a trial. We've got 12 factors that we have to look at. And is it fair to just sit there and say, okay, well, when two parents were together, living together, mom usually took care of the children the majority of the time while dad worked, or at least that's, the appearance in many of the cases. You had the division of labor. Why would a judge take that division of labor and say, well, that's just going to continue? Each parent has to do the same that each other had been doing as well as what they were doing in the first place. So each parent now needs to have the opportunity to see, do you really want 50-50? Some parents says, you know what, I don't want it. I want every other weekend. I want to be able to go out and party and have fun. We've had parents that do that. And then we've had other parents who step up and become just the best parent in the world because they're now finally getting the opportunity of a hands-on parent. instead of saying, no, that's a woman's job. And, it's easier not to fight with the spouse, especially a new mama, because they're going to bite you if you try to, go in there and take a bottle to feed them and everything. That's mama's job. You can change that dirty diaper, but I'm going to feed them.
Right. They get the best jobs.
Yeah. So, it's society needs to start realizing that dads can be good parents too. And one of the things I guess that would work and help out, because you asked, how do you stay out of family court? Make sure that if you're the father, you make it clear from the moment of conception, I will be this child's parent. I will be the equal parent. I will take equal care of this child. I will get up every other night to feed and change. Don't think it's all your job, because it will not be. And if they can't come to that agreement, don't have kids.
Most of us don't make
that
decisions. Most of us don't make decisions proactively like that, do
Yeah.
we? I mean,
Yeah. Well,
I
when you're
can't say most people.
actively-
I'll say most of us
Yeah.
people, all
When
of us. Yeah.
when you are actively talking about having a child, that is when you need to put your foot down and say, I will be active in my child's life, or we will not be having a child together. I will find a co-parent who will let me do that.
Yeah.
Because you have other parents out there that says, you know what? I just want the label. I don't care about the kids. That happens. The capacity, you can love them, but you don't have the patience to be around them. That is totally acceptable. Just recognize it. Don't abuse a child because you really don't want them around, but you want to prove a point. Don't abuse a child. You can still be mom or dad and let the other parent raise them as long as you support them financially and that they have help that they need.
That part of the discussion we're having, wishing it would become more proactive, right? So, in our schools, be it elementary school, junior high, high school, appropriate to those ages, that kind of dialogue going with them. I do think church and Christianity's got something to do with it.
Yeah.
I also think a lot of other really valuable things have to do with
Yeah.
it. I think, a lot of times these days, when you mention church, Christianity, Jesus Christ, there's a very noticeable group of people that they just jump right back, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm not super Christian. I didn't really start going to church until somewhat recently. I'm an old Army guy. When I think about, okay, what do we do in the military? What are we fighting for America? It's that freedom of worship, American pride. I didn't really see this disconnect between Christianity or this pushback, and there's a lot of it now. We're seeing it.
There's a lot of it.
We're seeing the results, and we could unwind this conversation about all kinds of different subjects, but reeling it right back into the agitation of a divorce or a separation. Are you seeing some of the latest societal trends, troubles in politics, separation from worship or spirituality, playing a part in bad decisions, playing a part in...
I'm not sure if religion actually plays a part in it. I just know people find it so much easier to have children outside of marriage with multiple fathers or multiple mothers, and then trying to commingle everything, and their next new significant other, let's try to replace the old one with the new one. That never works. That's a quick way of getting a judge really irritated at you. But people, it's too easy to get rid of the old one now.
Yeah,
I
agree. I agree.
It's too easy. We are a no-fault state. It doesn't matter why you want a divorce. I'm not allowed to really ask you. I can only ask you, is there any chance of reconciliation? Nope. Okay. Have fun. Whether it's been an affair or, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, drugs, alcohol. I can't let any of that enter into the divorce, the separation of property. It may enter into possibly spousal support or an unequal division of the property, depending on the circumstances, if it was financial. But for the most part, everything is going to be divided 50-50, and that includes the kids.
And so on, with the kids 50-50, does visitation usually go one way? Either mom or dad, like for the majority of the time, and it's an every other weekend non-custodial parent?
I very seldom do that. Parents have to come in and say, this is what we've agreed to, before I would even consider every other weekend. That is only 52 days a year that parent is getting. How do you maintain a relationship with your children? Mothers or fathers need to ask themselves, would I be satisfied with seeing my child just 52 days a year?
No.
Probably not.
No.
So
Or
why
less.
are you expecting that on the other parent? And yeah, that's one
question.
of my touchy points. If the child is school age and higher, and kindergarten and above, I think it should be week on, week off. That way everybody has equal duties, equal responsibility, equal fun. When I said the division of labor, everybody needs to be equal. How else can you be equal? Everybody has to work on schoolwork. Everybody has to do the laundry. Everybody has to care for a sick child. And the party who has the child should be the one who takes the kid to the doctor. It needs to be equal. Or why not let the other parent have the primary? Because they're the ones who's having to take time off from work to take them to the doctors.
Yeah.
If you're not going to take time off to take that child to the doctor and you think, no, that's mom's work. If you're not taking equal responsibility, then don't ask for it.
It's for me thinking about what you're saying, that falls under the umbrella of desire. Like
Correct.
That's what I wanted. That's why I became a dad.
Yeah.
To want to have those experiences, and raise and lead and all those things. And I'd like to think most parents do.
They think they want it until they start losing that income, and now how am I going to pay this bill? And how am I going to pay the electricity bill because I had to take 2 days off from work because the baby was too sick to send to school so I can go to work. Can't send them to daycare because they're sick. So you have to take that time off from work. Or make sure you've got a backup of somebody who's not going to be working who can sit there and take care of that child. Because if you're going to start expecting the other parent to be the one to do that, then you need to expect to be paying more in child support. Because now you're costing that parent the ability to pay his or her own rent.
Right.
And
I get it.
It's not fair.
I get that balance of time to commitment and all that stuff. Certainly.
Yeah. And we were discussing earlier, sometimes you've got parents that says, you know what, this is way more than what I want. I'll give the child support. And then other times, the parent steps up and they do such a beautiful job that the mother wonders, why did I ever do it all on my own while we were together? If he would have been doing that while we were together, we would still be together. Because sometimes that will drive a wedge because the mother just gets exhausted. I might as well do it without you than have you around putting me more work.
Again, complicated. Complicated. And I can imagine you take the exact same scenarios across 5 families. Yeah. Same family dynamic, house, zip code, income, all the same scenarios, and you'd have 5 completely different results.
Yep.
Because you have humans involved.
Right? You do. But that is the one good thing. If you have a judge who is consistent at the beginning of the case, everybody walking through that door knows that with everything being equal, this is how it's going to be. Then it takes a lot of the groundwork off of the litigants. They know what they're going to get coming in. It's an experiment to see if both sides can stand up to it. If the children's grades start slacking and you realize that it's on one of the parents' times when homework's not getting done, the doctor's appointments aren't being met, then, you've got the 4 to 6 months before the evidentiary hearing, you start seeing it. So the evidence becomes obvious whether or not both parents can really co-parent. We got 12 factors to look at, and cooperating to meet the needs of the child, and it doesn't matter what mom and dad think, they're not the center of their child's universe. They both are. They need mommy and daddy equally.
Unfortunately, in those cases where it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
children can go all the way into adulthood.
Yeah.
And there's no contact, and then it
And it's
becomes interesting.
Sometimes that is sad. Sometimes it's for the best, but sometimes it's really sad.
Yep.
And then you got those parents that you're glad they don't stay in contact because they do hate each other more than they love their kids. Their kids will be better off with only one of those parents in their life.
Because you're saying, but because the kids and one of the parents have so much hate between each other.
Because two parents have the hate between each other.
Right.
And so it interferes.
Oh,
The
totally.
kids are totally walking on eggshells 24/7. They can't tell mom how much they love dad and his new girlfriend because then she gets angry, and vice versa. They can't do the same thing with dad because then he gets totally angry. They can't stand the fact that the other parent may be happy, and the kids are stuck in the middle having to choose who, what, when, where, why, and why do I have these parents? When I was practicing law, I had two parents who had mental health issues, different mental health issues. One of them had Asperger's, and the other one we were pretty sure had borderline personality disorder. And once you have one of those, you probably have two or three of them mixed in when it comes to the personality disorders. And the dad was cold enough in his emotions where he could think of it logically. He loved his child, but he knew if the two of them continued to co-parent, the child would be miserable. So he offered to terminate his parental rights. Because there would not be, they wouldn't be able to properly co-parent. He said, I want my name and address to be available so that if the child wants to look me up, the child will have the right to do so. Mm-hmm. But we will make this child miserable with our problems. And that's not fair to the child.
I wonder why he went all the way to removing parental rights. I might think, what if he just stayed distant somehow? And just kept.
Because the other parent with the problem the other parent had would never have let him stay away. If he had no legal rights and no legal responsibilities, she could not come back. And her mental health in that area was so bad because, with borderline personality disorder, in a nutshell, you either love the person or you hate the person on that any given moment, any given day. That switch, you stupid, you know what, how dare you do this? Oh, baby, I love you so much. I don't, I mean, it switches that fast. And the woman was bad.
Yeah.
You would see text messages 2 minutes apart that was just so that divergent in the messages. So, I mean, even the judge in that case, and man, this was a long time ago. Even that judge was like, you know what? Unfortunately, I think you're right. So we went in and terminated.
I wonder if the kids ever reached back out and
I don't
made
know.
contact.
I don't know.
That would be neat to know.
I stayed in contact with the father for a long time. And, but then he went somewhere. I think he went overseas for a while. And then I just totally lost contact. But brilliant man, brilliant mother. They were both good people. But they realized they should never have had a child because they couldn't mix.
That's a tough one. Telling someone they should have never had a child is so
never had a child, but never had a child with you.
Together. Okay, I understand. That's tough too.
They both can be great parents, but the relationship just, it was just the way the dynamics of their mental health wouldn't fit. Would I ever suggest that? Probably not. Had he not come to me and said, I think we need to consider this, I would never have thought of it.
Yeah. To me, that seems extreme. I get, to each his own, right? I have a separation anxiety just thinking about it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
blessed. I think even I've got some alienation stories myself, but I still feel very blessed in a lot of ways to be where I'm at today, family wise,
Yeah.
and great successes going on these days. Great growth every day.
Yeah. Well, I guess on that case, the good part was that he was still willing to pay child support, even with his rights terminated. He was still prepared to support his child just because. And the mother's like, no, if you're not going to get, this is one of her good moments. If you're not going to want to see the child have any say in it and stuff like that, well, why should I make you support this child?
Interesting
So he
way to
did.
look. That's like in one case. That was
In one case,
multiple interesting ways to look at different things.
yeah. And unfortunately, mental health issues is growing more and more. I would say, back when I started practicing 25, almost 26 years ago, 25 years ago, because I graduated in 2001, you'd have maybe one mental health issue a year. Now it's almost daily. It's, and then you've got so many people who want to go out and put that label, oh, this person is so narcissist, without really knowing what narcissism is. It's just a label that everyone wants to label people nowadays without really understanding what they're saying.
Well, and how do you determine that?
I sent them to a psychologist.
So they go out to a psychologist, and husband and wife, whatever the exes, they go both get mentally evaluated somehow.
And they are expensive. These evaluations are $10,000 a person, if I'm not mistaken. When you send them down, because you got to have a report, then the person has to be willing to come in and testify. So you're going to put a lot of money in trying to have an official label placed on that other party. Because if you come and tell me she's a narcissist, okay, where's your evaluation that proves it?
Prove it. Yeah.
Well, I don't have one. I said, then it's just a layman not liking the person that they were with initially. I don't want to hear it. Because you are not a therapist, you are not a psychologist, and you do not have the credentials to tell me this person's got a mental health problem.
It brings up a really good point. I mean, if the alienating parent is much more financially prepared than the target parent, that's just seemingly one more level of alienation that can be achieved.
Yeah, if one party has all the finances, then the other party's got an uphill battle. But thinking about it, I actually think that the party who has all the money is usually the one who's being alienated, because that person's the one who's working the most.
Alienated before divorce altogether.
Correct.
You're
It can be
saying.
even before a divorce. It starts. It's like, man, look at this. Your father's working all these hours. I guess he doesn't love you like he should. Just remember the parent who's always here with you. And, I've not had one that's come in and said something like that.
Maybe that verbatim.
Not for verbatim, but that is how some of them can start.
Well,
And
how would you catch it, though?
a lot of times you don't.
Well, because if in a, just using a scenario in a 24-hour day, if that dialogue, that real rough dialogue is going back on just any scenario possible, but then by the time they get in front of you in courtroom, they're about as charming as can possibly be.
Yeah, both parents are great.
Right?
They're all, I see the best of people at the worst of times. And most of the time they're charming. They try to keep their cool. They try to put their best foot forward, because who's making a decision regarding your children and your property and your debt?
The person you're trying to impress.
Yeah, they're trying to impress me, so I only see the good side. And they're both sitting there, or maybe just one side sitting there telling me all this horrible stuff about the other parent, but you've been married for 30 years. Sometimes the length of the marriage says a lot. Okay, when did this person become, someone that you can't leave your children with? When yesterday, before he filed for a divorce,
that's a big one.
you were going off to work, leaving the children with him. So,
Yeah. A lot of accusations.
yeah, you would go
are-
grocery shopping, leaving the kids there with the other parents. So, we look at so many different things. There's no problem drinking. Been with them for 20 years. There's no, the drinking and the gambling didn't bother you 10 years ago when it started. So why is it bothering you now that he only has 2 beers a night? Or that she likes to have her glass of wine after the kids go to bed. Why is that bothering you now? It didn't bother you 10 years ago. And sitting at a casino, this is Las Vegas. That is a lot of Las Vegans' pastime. It's not community waste. But yet, when it's time for the divorce, they try to bring it up. Nope, they have the right to spend their money.
Las Vegas has got to be an interesting place. I guess the human factor goes coast to coast in America, right?
It does.
But I suppose Las Vegas does add an element of, I wanted to ask you too, and I know we can't talk about live cases, but in 20 to 25 years, can you remember something that's just side-splitting hilarious? Just something that's, I don't mean to put you on the spot, and we'll... Right about now, Dustin, if you want to play the theme music from Jeopardy, we can until...
I don't think any separation between two people who once loved each other. There's nothing really hilarious there. But I think when I was practicing law, the husband actually promoted the wife stripping until they went to go get a divorce. And look, she's obviously, because she's taking her clothes off for all of these men here.
He was the promoter, the business promoter.
He was promoting her stripping until they separated. Now look at her, I should get the kid because look at what she's doing with her own time. It's the,
that one's
you
too
have
easy. God.
You have to laugh at these things or it will drive you crazy. Then the mother worked in Pahrump in one of those nice little places out in the middle of nowhere, bringing home the bacon, frying it up in the pan, and then when they go to get a divorce, well, look at all the affairs she's had on me.
Oh, Lord. And that would be a lot.
Yeah. And that was during a consultation. Yeah, I've lost a lot of clients in the past because I'm like, I can't represent you in your double standards. It's just that just didn't work. If it was fine while she was bringing home big bucks and you were out there blowing it, while she was,
right,
earning a living, then don't come in and complain about it now. If it's good for 20 years while you were married, when it's no longer lucrative, don't say no. Look at what they did.
I get it.
A big warning for women or men: do not become dependent on the opposing party. If you cannot support yourself, what are you going to do if that person dies? How are you going to support yourself? You need to keep the eye on, the eye in the future because you don't know what's going to happen. So many people have lived 20, 30 years stay-at-home parent, and I've had women who's not the stay-at-home parent. They're the ones who went off to work. But yet when you look at the finances, there's not enough money there to support 2 households. Don't become dependent. Then you don't have to worry about being left with, all of a sudden having to go down and, live in a mobile home that's seen much better days.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's, there's times where I just cry because there's not enough money to do it. And in the law, there has to be a need, but there also has to be an ability to pay. And if you don't have the ability to pay, that doesn't matter how much need one has. The money's not there. Right. Because I'm not going to make, we can't make the one side homeless to support the other side. It's not the way it is.
Do you see one side or the other, male, female, not tracking a statistic here, but do you see either side seemingly trying to bankrupt the other side every once in a while?
Every once in a while, yeah. It doesn't happen
Or let's
a
just
lot.
say harm, whether it's bankrupt or homeless or defame or whatever.
Some of the things that I see is the person with deeper pockets will try to cost the other side being able to afford their attorney. That's why the law allows us to give attorney's fees, because, in accordance with two different cases, whether it's a paternity case or if it's a divorce, each party has the right to meet the other one on the equal footing. So if you're going to have an attorney and you got all the money and the other parent cannot afford an attorney, you're going to pay both attorney's fees. Sorry. So before you start trying to cause problems, you need to realize you may wind up paying both sides.
The person with no attorney may end up paying both sides, you're saying, or vice versa.
Well, I'm probably one of the few attorneys that look at, the meeting on equal footing. Even if this guy has all this money, if he doesn't have an attorney, how is she having an attorney meeting on equal footing? Then it's just going to put her, and most of the time the man makes more money. I mean, that is just a law of business nowadays. Usually the husband earns more money, but it does go the other way. But if the one side don't have an attorney, how is it equal footing if now all of a sudden he's having to pay this one's attorney's fees?
Right.
If this one is purposefully running up that attorney bill, then there's an award of attorney's fees. But if there's no attorney over here and there's no game plan going on, sorry, you hired him. He didn't. He doesn't have an attorney. I ain't giving you attorney's fees just because.
Yeah.
And I think other judges do it the other way. Oh, yeah, you don't have money, so I'm going to give you attorney's fees even if the other side don't have. How is that equal footing? It isn't.
And again,
he's paying all the bills. So he don't have the extra money to go get an attorney. Her mommy and daddy paid for this one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Her friends hate him, so, he had an affair, so everybody in her community is giving her money to help.
Yeah.
And, and this is just things that comes off the top of my head on how she may be affording the attorney.
Oh, yeah. And it's also expensive.
It is.
It is all
It
so incredibly expensive. I heard that Judge Gordon would, and I haven't met Judge Gordon.
He's great.
I haven't met Judge Gordon. I heard he's coming out with some kind of a program or promoting a program
Been
for
there.
like a pro se,
Yeah.
which is kind of a different set of rules.
Yeah. It's a informal trial program.
Okay.
And it is something that every judge up there had always done. These pro ses do not know how to put on a case. Mm-mm. They don't know how to make objections. They don't know what is properly put into evidence. They don't know any of this stuff. So, instead of the judges just taking over like we always did in the past, we try to get both parents or parties to agree that they're going to do the informal trial program, bring me all of your evidence. If it's not something that's really admissible, I ignore it. And if it's something that I need, fantastic. If not, it's irrelevant. I'm not going to waste my time looking at something that's not relevant. And then they can make a statement and then ask questions to clarify, and then decisions are made. Most of the time, I turn it into a settlement, and try to get them to agree to meeting in the middle on stuff. And I think 99% of the time, once you sit down and just have a conversation with them, and you have a time to spend 2 hours, 3 hours, even all day with them, they begin to understand what the law really is, and they're more willing to settle the case. And how do you think is easier? To walk out of there after I've crammed something down your throat, or for you to agree that that's the way it's going to be?
Yeah.
It's always easier for them to agree.
Yeah.
And so they walk out of there feeling, okay, I got a fair shake. I finally got to be heard. Because during those 15-minute hearings, you don't get to hear the stuff you need. So people need to be patient and get it to that point.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you all the time you need. I just don't have the time in a 15-minute hearing. I need to just put a Band-Aid on the problem and move on to the next one because, they've got blood coming out too.
Long day. I'm picturing case after case after case all day long. Is your caseload, do you, out of let's say 20 cases a day, are those 20 cases all over the board their subject matter, or is Mondays for certain types of cases, divorces, are Tuesdays for elder abuse, and I'm just
Yeah, I
trying to
don't
come
do
up with
elder
family court.
It's
but
anything.
just-
Anything that is under my jurisdiction for me to hear: divorce, custody, child support. Sometimes people bring stuff in me, and I'm like, I don't think that falls under my jurisdiction. Sometimes we have to, determine: is it something that Nevada should be hearing, or is it something that Florida should be hearing? Where have the kids lived for the past 6 months? With the other parent's acknowledgement that they've been living there. Because the children have to live here for at least 6 months for the court to have jurisdiction over the children. We can get you divorced if you're here 6 weeks, but we can't decide anything on the children if they haven't lived here or have not been here for 6 months. The other state has jurisdiction.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
So
this is stuff.
So if another state has jurisdiction in a dissolution of marriage and there's a custody issue, they get a divorce in Las Vegas, and they were from it's Florida, you say.
Yeah.
Then do the family courts in Clark County contact Florida somehow?
No, a lot of things. There has to be a case. I mean, it's subject matter jurisdiction is so convoluted. There's judges out there that don't understand it. They have to sit there and look up the law and refresh their memory every single time it comes in front of them. And you can take emergency jurisdiction if there's not a case anywhere else. If there's another case somewhere else, you have to set what we call a Uniform Child Custody Jurisdictional Enforcement Act conference, where we talk to the other judge. Yeah. Well, it's the UCCJEA is what we call it.
Okay.
So we set that conference with the other judge, and the judges decide who's the better better court to make this determination. Usually, if both parents are now living in the new jurisdiction, then that judge will relinquish jurisdiction to this one, and then I can hear it. But if there's not an active case in that jurisdiction, then I can take emergency jurisdiction because everybody lives here and the parents are agreeing I should hear it.
Okay.
And then I can make that determination. It comes up, though, when you've got parents living in two different places. And, one of the parents are going to get better treatment in Mississippi, and, the other parent's going to get better treatment in Nevada. And so sometimes they try to push it and sneak around or disappear so the other side don't know where they're actually at for 6 months so they can get that jurisdiction. To me, I don't think that counts because you took the child out of that jurisdiction without permission. In the state of Nevada, parents have joint physical custody until a court of competent jurisdiction says otherwise. So you have to have that parent's permission to leave or the court's permission to leave. So technically, that child really did not relocate because they didn't have the other parent's permission.
Yeah. I realize those technicalities.
Unless the child has been here for 6 months and the other parent says, you're going to be better to me anyway.
Man, complicated. That's just
And we do this
one
day
example.
We do this day in, day out, 5 days a week. And then when we're not at work, we are preparing for the next day or looking at the trial or writing orders because proper person litigants don't usually do orders on mine. I'd heard a trial, so I have to write the decree on that 2-day trial. I've got to put all the facts and everything and all my findings and conclusions of law and the legal arguments and then what I finally order. Sometimes it is a 20-hour a day job.
How do you separate? How do you find the time to
I have better.
to decompress, I should say?
I like to cook. So, I enjoy cooking, and the more complicated it is, the more I enjoy it. Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, I love it.
Right on.
It's like let's knock on wood, I have yet to ruin a turkey or a prime rib. So it's, and I keep trying different ways of doing things. So one of these days it'll come out bad. But so far, so good.
Right on.
There may be a time where I just have to even get away from my husband. So, I'll go out and play games on the computer, or maybe even have to go down to a casino so I can sit at a machine where no one knows me and just pound the daylights out of the machine, not paying any attention on what's going on. And everything's going around in my head, and it's like, okay, I feel better now. Go home and start cooking.
Have you ever had someone recognize you at a casino?
No, because I'm usually looking around. I was in the Air Force, and I had a top secret security clearance. So I'm used to constantly looking around me to see who is around me. And most of the time, I will see that person before they see me. And then I disappear.
Or let them walk up and say, hey, recognize you,
Nope,
whatever.
I usually don't even
dip
give
out
that
quick.
opportunity. Because, now all of a sudden, what if there's a witness from the other side? Oh, look who was talking to the other side. So that would kind of disqualify me from the case, because it's the appearance of impropriety. And so I try to do everything I can to not let that happen.
I had a jury situation like that once, where the jury selection, I got down to a certain point. We broke for lunch. It was downtown. I went up to Neonopolis and ran into the private investigator and the attorney on the defendant's side of the case that we were on. We didn't know that at the time. I just ran into this person. Like, said, what are you doing up here? I'm here for this. And they figured it out. And they're like, oh, we can't talk to you.
Yeah.
So when I got back into the courtroom, whoever the judge was, I don't remember, this would have been over 20 years ago. She said, do you know anybody in the courtroom?
You have to say that.
As jurors, do you know anyone? And I was like, I know that person.
But you don't know them. You only just met them. Say, well, I ran into them at lunchtime, and as soon as they realized who I was, they left. That would have been the proper answer.
She said, how the judge asked,
Yeah.
and how do you know the private investigator here? And I said, well, we went on a couple of dates, Your Honor. And she said, okay, go. She laughed. She said, okay, go. And everyone else kind of laughed a little bit too.
Yeah.
So that was my one and only jury duty experience ever.
They
It was
don't
a good
let us
story.
do jury duty.
Yeah, talk. You know what?
The attorneys don't want us to be on their jury.
Are there jury trials in family court?
No. There will be a jury trial if they have pled some sort of tort case. Let's say they decide to plead the personal injury side of domestic violence. Then they have a right to do a jury demand. We have one courtroom up there that can seat a jury. But that's about the only way you will have a jury trial in family court.
Are there arguments around that? And I'm not an expert on the law at all. So when I use words like district court and municipal court, sometimes I don't remember. I don't even realize, is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Are they different things or whatever? But in the courtroom experiences where there's a jury situation, why isn't there one in family law?
Do you really want 12 bitter women deciding what's going to happen to the husband's property?
Is that a member of jury selection from the attorneys?
You've got you've got your certain rules, and if you've used up all of your legal challenges and you don't have any other challenges, that's what you're stuck with. Is that who you really want to decide your case? Or
No.
12 angry men for a woman? Okay? So they just figure that one judge to sit there and look at both sides after being around them for a year and probably like, neither one of you are nice. You're making me work. It's my job. But, that's when I sit back. That's when I take a look. Bank statements. I see police reports. I look you in the eye. And if you're sitting there smirking while trying to tell me, he beat me, but you're smirking and it's obvious you're not telling me the truth, that's going to take a big part. Your demeanor goes a long way at proving the case. If you're sitting there talking, and I picked this up when I was practicing law. You know, he's bad, you know, and, you know, God, and they're in their face constantly. And then when you turn to domestic violence, then they become a wilt. That's an act.
How do you see that, though, in that 15 minutes?
You can't sit in the 15 minutes. That's
you see
why
it a lot more as a representing attorney, don't you?
that is why as you see it a lot more, but that is why, you know, you have the 12 factors. Domestic violence is one of the 12 factors, and it has equal weight. But if you want the presumption that the perpetrator of domestic violence should not have joint or primary physical custody, that takes clear and convincing evidence. That requires a trial. They may have pled guilty to save money, but that has not been a trial. You have to put on your evidence and prove that it actually happened, because people will plead guilty to something they did not do because of the costs. Not smart, but they do it all the time. You know, they have to pay the attorney, and then what if they're found guilty? Then they're still going to have to pay all the different costs here. And, you know, let's be real here. You know, if you're wasting the DA's time and the judge's time, you may get 6 months in jail for it. So why would you take the chance? You know, they don't recognize the fact that, you know, domestic violence can cost you custody, and it costs you money. It costs you your Second Amendment rights. There's so many things now that by pleading guilty to domestic violence can destroy your future desires.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Removing domestic violence kind of from a hypothetical scenario. Mm-hmm. What are the scenarios in parental alienation that would be severe enough without any abuse whatsoever, no physical abuse? Is it? And without domestic violence, without kidnapping, without taking kids across state lines, without those three pretty extreme things, what would still line up, or what have you seen in the severe arena with parental alienation? And can you make? It's almost a rhetorical question. I was going to say, can you make decisions around it? More so, I should phrase the question: what decisions can you make around that to rectify that?
I would have to talk bad about other courts to really say what I want to say, and I won't do that.
Okay, we won't make you.
The laws are making it harder and harder for us to try to help fix the problem. The decisions that the other courts, the appellate court and the Supreme Court makes it hard for us to say, do what? We can't force reunification? You know, break the tie with the other parent, separate that for a month or two so that the kid doesn't see how bad it is. We can't do that, knowing we're going to go back, because it's now, it's not fair to this other parent. It's not fair to the child to cut them off. You know, some of these need that. Sometimes it takes that period of time away from the constant bad talking of the other parent. You see what your mom's trying to do? She's trying to take you away from me. You got to fight it. You know, things like that. You know, I don't know if anyone has ever done that, but you
can imagine that anything from suggestion to innuendo.
Yeah,
I'm sure
or even flat out telling him this is a bad person. You don't want to be around them. Why isn't that parent understanding that you are now telling this child half of you is bad? Because that is a product of both parents, not just the one.
Yeah.
And how can we stop it? It takes therapy. It takes what we call reunification therapy, and we are not allowed to get as drastic as some cases may require. When it's really, really super bad. If it's just starting, it's easy. You know, you just send them down to family therapy and have them work on it with cautioning the other parent. You could lose custody if you keep this up. But, you know, the higher level courts don't allow it, and sometimes I think it's because we do not have anyone, nor have we ever had anyone that I know of, sitting on either one of the appellate court or the Supreme Court who has ever practiced family law. If you don't understand this dynamic, how can they really tell us this is what you need to be doing in these cases if they've not been in our trenches?
Good point.
We've had one of the retired Supreme Court justices come down and says, I never realized how hard this is. I would never have made some of the decisions we made if I would have known this.
Just recognizing the complications.
Recognizing the complications that they thought they knew and they didn't. But they can't come down and sit around and listen because some of those cases may wind up with them and then they'd have to recuse themselves from making a decision. So they can't get the experience after the fact.
Yeah, I get it. It's
in a catch-22.
It is. So several roadblocks in the path.
Correct.
You know.
So our job, there for a long time, we were like getting a year out for trials. But yet we're supposed to make custody determinations within 6 months. But we can't do that when the Supreme Court stated you pretty much have to have an evidentiary hearing to determine if you need an evidentiary hearing. You know, you need to take that 2 hours and take evidence and take testimony to see if it rises to the point to where it needs it. Really? 500 active cases is the average that the judges have? At any given time, 500 cases are open. We've got 20+ thousand cases assigned to us.
In the 8th district right now?
In the 8th district right now.
20,000.
In family court. We've got 20,000 assigned to us. They're not open all at the same time. There's only on average between 400 and 500 cases that's open. But if everybody in town decided we hate each other and they all decided to reopen their cases, we would never be able to hear them all. And some periods of time, you've got more of those that's having to revive than at other times.
And by revive, I'm not sure I follow that.
You have a final decree of divorce with custody and everything else like that. The parties go on their way. Then they realize, well, heck, I forgot to go after his retirement account.
Okay.
That's community property. So it's an AMI motion. It's an omitted asset if it's within the proper period of time because you've got a statute of limitations to do this. Then they bring it forward so that case is reopened. When children are involved, that case is subject to being reopened until those children reaches the age of minority and goes away. If you've got a disabled child, we will have that case until the child passes away or until both parents are dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of cases at, over any given time that can be reopened and litigated.
I understand. That makes sense. That does. Wow. No, that's a lot to think about. The limitations are a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And I've said this, I think, to every guest. What I really want the show to be is about resolution and proactive resolution.
Yeah.
So all of these conversations that we have, I'd like for the Dustin Juniors to be, having these conversations with all their buddies. We've talked about putting a panel together with a bunch of guys and gals, 25, 22, 18, 29, in that age group, just to get a bunch of opinions.
Yeah.
On how do you feel about this scenario? How do you feel about that scenario?
That would be interesting to see.
And just have it be candid and have them and non-judgmental either. Like let's find out what the sentiment of and the expectations are. What's the expectations of a new relationship going in? How does someone think they ought to be treated? How does someone think they ought to treat? All these
That would
things.
be cool.
And then what's the daily practice? What's the daily practice of why someone's acting the way that they are, either individually or in a relationship, right? And because the more I get into Christianity myself,
Yeah.
I don't question from I challenge you question standpoint. I question from I'm interested. what practices are people following on a daily basis? And I would imagine the majority of it's probably none. So if it's none, then where does morality come from? Or where do they feel it comes from? Maybe it is religion. Maybe it's some other select source. And I don't mean to call selective morality extreme. I don't mean to criticize it in this moment. I think a lot of people listening would. But I would be. No, I am very interested in, I don't think I'm going to come up with the answer,
Yeah.
Your Honor. I don't. But I think constant conversation about it gets everyone talking about it more so
Yeah,
that it's
it
more
does.
of a forefront conversation
Yes.
instead of no conversation at all. And then we have problems and we're going to handle them all wrong. No more conflict resolution, no more self-confidence, no more self-love for any of our kids before they even get into relationships. That's
Yeah.
what I see happen. And I see a lot of victimhood. I see a lot of ladders being climbed leveraging victimhood,
Yeah.
you know, and I as a nation, I think I know we're a much stronger nation. I know we got to be a much stronger nation by having tough grit, you know. I think as this society rolls forward and we have our new generations going, they're Dustin Jr., they're the leaders. They're the leaders.
They're future leaders.
They're the future leaders.
Our country depends on them.
So what's their sentiment? How are they feeling? Where are their strengths and where do they draw the line? And where are their compassions?
Yeah.
Where are ours? Right? As times are changing, right?
Yeah.
The technology crowd. We did not grow up with that. Did
No.
we? You know, our school life, our before school life, after school life, entertainment life, TV life, not this cyborgish, not this attached to us, right?
What state was it that said that the child has to be 14, 15, or 16 before they can have
A smartphone?
a smartphone?
Sounds like China,
I-
but you can't argue
Yeah.
with them on
I
that one.
kind of agree with that. One of the states did that, and I can't remember which one it is. Or maybe social media. You know, they can have a phone, but it's, you know, flip phone, old-fashioned flip phone. Because I have sat in the room with a bunch of teenagers. They're communicating with each other by sending texts back and forth. But they're right there and they can talk. And they don't. They're forgetting how to actually communicate with each other, have that face-to-face conversation. And it's scary on what it's going to. And then you've got these people who are falling in love with AI, you know, with their Alexis. You know, they're wanting to have a
Intellectual relationship.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
no, a love relationship with these
Spiritual.
Yeah,
Loving. Love,
yeah.
spiritual.
You know, I'm in love with this person. I want to marry my AI. They get me. And then you've got that part of AI where it's teaching kids how to kill themselves.
Yeah.
These kids need to be more mature before they're given something that can tell you, oh, I understand why you're so unhappy. Maybe you should die. It's understandable on, you know, why kids should not be introduced to this technology until they're old enough and mature enough to handle it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if we track back technology even to the TV, it's arguable. Technologies are way outpacing our preparation for them or our how do we integrate them into our society smartly and all these things. And this one really went fast.
It did.
Like I got my first smartphone, I'm pretty sure 2008.
Yeah.
2009, somewhere in there. My iPhone, probably the first one. And the change in lifestyle, the change in business, the change in speed of communication and the ability to, you know, track files and be mobile and all these things was instantly.
Yeah,
you know,
it
changed
was.
us. And coming from a little bit of an older generation, technology-wise, I wasn't really connected into the social media or internet side of things as much as my kids. And I look at, they are glued to this device. If I'm texting, I might not get an answer back for quite a while. And for several years, I was like, okay, guys, how do you have this in your hand? You're on it all the time, and you say you didn't see a text come in from me. Is it
Nah.
notification? Right? Is it like,
Nah.
come on, man?
Yeah, they just
And
didn't
then-
want to see it.
Well, and then
Their friend is more important, or their girlfriend or boyfriend is more important than you are.
And I've heard that too. I've heard people say, Jeff, don't kid yourself. They didn't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
They got that message. You're on hold for a minute, which makes me think, wait a minute. Where are we going in that hierarchy from reverence in our generations, from kids to parents, kids to grandparents, and all that stuff? So I think there's a lot of pull away from reverence.
I always tell our parents, enjoy your 8-year-olds, because when they're 13, you no longer exist. And then they'll wake up around 26 or 27 years old and go, oh, wow, look how smart they are, and they're now my best friend. You're going to have a long period of time where everything else in the world is more important, including that rock on the road. Because you're not going to matter to them because you're dumb.
And were we that way too?
We were.
Were we that way too with
I
our
was
parents
so
too?
horrible to my mom and dad. And I'll sit down and I will cry now at some of the stuff that I've pulled or even said to my mom and dad, when I was 16, 17 years old. It was, and the more of a rebel you are at, don't tell me no. Because if you tell me no, I'll show you I can do it. Explain to me why I shouldn't do it, and I probably won't. But don't tell me I can't. Because can't never could.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's the type of teenager I was. I can't go out with that 29-year-old? Watch me. I'd sneak out that bedroom window. Well, my dad was usually waiting for me, but when I went up that window, because he knew me. But, it's, you got to know who your kid is and what is going to work with your kid. Sometimes you got to realize, okay, I can no longer tell you what's best. You got to figure it out. So let me tell you why this is best and why the other way is wrong. You got a lot of kids where they probably wouldn't get in as much trouble if the parent would just trust them.
I can tell you that when I first became a dad, my mindset didn't have anything on the radar telling me I should go take a dad class. I should go read a dad book. I should go read a marriage book, relationship book, self-improvement book. Wasn't even on my radar at all. Hindsight, 2020, Monday night quarterback action. Going back, that there are two things that I would definitely have instilled back then, and that would be much more open-minded and engaged in growing myself and learning. I don't think looking back, I don't think I had bad ideas back then or anything like that, but I could have been so much better equipped to handle what was coming in.
Okay.
So much better equipped to handle things in a responsive way rather than a reactive way, maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
Whether it was reacting outwardly or reacting inwardly with too much disappointment, low self-esteem, procrastination, all these things, right? So I think that mental health should be at the mental gym as much as body health, and getting that interest into our kids. Again, talking about when you're 13 to 26 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's hard to make interesting, isn't it?
It is.
That's hard. Reaching right back out here to Dustin Jr. We talk about things, D, but it's not necessarily the brand new opening for Mission Impossible 5, or something exciting, right? The content, you kind of have to simmer down and get serious, and that's tough at the 20-year-old crowd, right?
You asked the question, what can parents do not to come and see me, not to come before me? There are a lot of internet classes. UNLV's got some classes, cooperative parenting, how to co-parent, stuff like that. Maybe at the time you start thinking about having kids, or oops, guess what? You actually sit down together and do, because these are internet most of the time.
Judge,
you
I don't
listen
know
it.
what you mean by oops. Could you explain that a little bit? No, I'm kidding.
Well, if you don't know, and you have how many kids?
We bought them all. We bought
Oh,
them
okay.
all.
All
No.
right. The stork delivered them, huh?
Yes.
All right.
That's the story. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, if they would take these classes, knowing that they're going to hit rough patches in the future, it's not going to be a bed of roses. You got to go through some of this manure to get to that bed of roses, and then you're going to hit manure again. So if you would go through these classes and learn how to cooperate, learn how to talk to that teenager, learn how to do it through some professionals who have put this stuff together, then as you're walking in and about to say that to your kid, you may say, hold it. I remember that from this video that I was watching. That hurts my child. Maybe they won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing, and I'll lead the charge of admission on this, would be ego death.
Yeah.
Really pushing ego death as much as you can. And some days it works and some days it doesn't, maybe depending on the scenario.
Yeah.
So here we are, just starting out 2026.
Yep.
And you've got your job, no matter what, for the next
12 months.
12,
Well,
11
and a half months now.
11 and a half. So of the things you can control, like we talk about these things in life, of the
Yeah.
things you can control and the things you don't, what do you see for your department over the next year? Anything worth mentioning? Changes, goals?
I want to make sure that my department stays as efficient as it is. I can lose. And unlike so many of the other judges that's walked in, they have walked into a judge giving up 6 months into it. Let's say they get beat in the primary because they had 3 people in the race. So they just stop doing trials. They just schedule everything out to next year. I have no intention of doing that, because the litigants are who suffers. My job is to try to push these litigants and have everything done so that if and when someone does come in to replace me, then they can walk into something that's still smooth. They're not having to hear 50 trials that should have been heard during the 6 months prior to. Yeah, I will not coast because the litigants don't deserve that. They deserve their cases to be heard in a timely fashion and to try to get it worked.
Good point. Good point. Well, I have really enjoyed you coming in.
It was
and chatting with us. I'd love to do it again. We've got all kinds of time in the next eight months here.
Okay.
And God only knows, what comes up and things like that. We're definitely going to be talking to a lot of the resolution side, the counselors, the therapists, philosophy in general, maybe even a little bit of clergy and stuff like that, to really be kind of trying to head these things off at the pass.
Yeah.
And we'll see if we can move the needle. And I think it should be a national needle. We're starting in Las Vegas. Is Las Vegas both the marriage capital and the divorce capital of the world? Do we know that stat? Maybe
I don't know if it's the marriage capital, but it is the divorce capital, or it used to be, because you only have to be here for 6 weeks to get that. You don't even have to live here to get married. You just have to be able to, and you can get married. We may be the annulment capital of the world, because then they wake up the next morning and go, oh, what did I do last night? I've got a wife at home.
Oh, Lord. Like the true hangover movie
scenario.
The
true hangover scenario. So
annulment, I've heard of that. Is that just kind of within a certain amount of days after marriage you can get that done, or are there other rules beyond that?
I've had people go home and 20 years later file for an annulment. And they've never lived together. They had that one great night in Las Vegas, and that's it. They've never seen anything at all.
Man.
And so they moved to annul. That is so reckless on both of their parts, because this is a community property state. If one of you are still living here, we're going to divide your property because that spouse has a right to half of your house, half of your retirement, possibly spousal support if that person has just become disabled. As soon as you know that it's over, you need to get into it. If you're separating and you know you're never going back, you need to file for that divorce and get rid of it, because the longer you stay married, the longer that person has a right to half of everything.
I figure I want to have another episode that's all about risk reduction, about marital risk reduction.
Well, it's just, some people some of these consultations that I gave before I come in there, and they're like, well, I haven't seen them since the day we got married, but I found out that they own this huge house and they have a business and all this other stuff, and I want my share of it.
Well, maybe because it's a dangling carrot. I've had this theory before, like the subprime mortgage lending market back 2000, 2001, and 2006 area. If those subprime, like breathing on a mirror, here's $500,000, loans weren't there as a dangling carrot, they wouldn't be there. So if the dangling carrot of strategy and traction exists for the opportunist, exists for the bidder.
Yeah.
And I could keep going on. So I think that, call it a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
That vehicle being family court and or maybe family law and or family attorneys and some yes, some no. That gets complicated too, right?
Yeah.
That's like a real moving target.
Actually, the law is clear. And no matter what people want us to do, we have to follow the law. If you are married, you are a community. If you do not want that community to exist, you've got to end it.
And with that, Your Honor, I will wish you the very, 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 very best of luck. I'd love to definitely keep in touch with you and stuff like that.
Definitely.
And would love to chat some more. We could do Zoom or in studio or whatever and everything like that.
This is fun. I enjoy conversations like this.
No, it's very cool. And it was a really good time doing this with you because, again, I have these lists of questions. We talked beforehand, kind of talking about stuff, but the conversation, this long form conversation, I've been convinced since the early Joe Rogan days that this is where getting stuff out is at, because it's longer than a 15-minute.
Yeah. Let's here's your questions, answer them. Okay, bye. You get more information. But, a lot of things that I've talked about today, it is not any case that's ever been in front of me. I pull back on 20 years of practicing law, and I piecemeal stuff together to make it more interesting. I've over-embellished some of it. And I hope nobody out there thinks anything I said was legal advice, because you got attorneys out there that will disagree with me.
What? An attorney disagrees with a judge?
Of course, they do it all the time.
Come on.
Oh, come in, sit down and watch some days. You'll see how they like to argue.
I'm kidding. I'll bet.
They get paid for the word.
I will tell you this. Again, not to throw any names downrange right now, but I did recently see a video that some of the other, what I would call them, local journalist groups have put out. And there was a video put out about a judge that has elected to run. And it is very pretty an abrasive conversation between this family law attorney and a previous existing family court judge. I think it was from like 10 years ago or something. Yeah. But it was pretty brutal. That's all I'm going to say.
Sometimes
it's very hard to look at that from the public's point of view and think that's who I would like to be on the bench. Yeah. That seemed like a very angry, opinionated person.
Well, I'm going to just go. I had a problem. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and taking medications to suppress my hormones has turned me into a stark raving angel. Well, just the opposite. And for about a year and a half, it was horrible. And I almost resigned because, I couldn't get everything under control. And my doctor's like, you're almost at the end of it. You know, you'll notice all of a sudden you're going to be back to normal. I am. And it did happen probably within a month of her telling me that. But, you know, I was disciplined for it. But I recognized, yeah, I had a problem, and I still have to at times sit back and say, okay, I've got to take a breath, because, you know, it's, you know, menopause, PMS times a million when there is no hormones going through your body. So it's hard. I think I know which video you're talking about. I don't know what the excuse is for that. And I think I know who you're talking about. And that same attorney does that to every judge. And every attorney out there.
Run. You know,
Run Run hard. It's, you know, I try not to talk bad about anybody. I recognize there is reasons usually for actions like that. But if you're going to do that as an attorney, when you're sitting up there in the position of power, what's it going to be like?
I think that's the question. So, well, we'll keep an eye on it for sure.
All right.
And all
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah. And again, thank you very much for coming down.
I appreciate it.
Love to talk with you again soon.
I hope so.
All right, for sure. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Deadbeat Chronicles with Judge Mary Perry. If this conversation hit home, challenged your thinking, or made you yell, "Finally!" at your screen, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, and if you haven't already, like this video, share it, send it to a friend, an ex, a group chat, or that one person who swears the system is working just fine. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see next? More judges? More real conversations? More uncomfortable truths with a little dark humor on the side? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this show isn't about talking at the system, it's about listening to the people living in it. Thanks for spending time with us. We'll see you right back on the next episode of the Deadbeat Chronicles, where life lessons usually show up late and unpaid. See you soon.